host, Jason Sunkel, tonight. Jumping on to talk some big picture NBA stuff. We're going to talk some offseason moves. We're going to talk about some players, some rankings, just a bunch of different questions that we're throwing together here that we stole from ESPN, and just going to kind of give our thoughts as far as some of these big picture NBA topics. Jay, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. The Cleveland Guardians are in first place in the Central Division. Mike, did you know this before I just said it to you?
I did, because I watched the last 2.5 or 3 innings of the game tonight on my
Oh my
phone as I
gosh,
was
this is
sitting
this is amazing.
immobilized, sitting immobilized. So, hey, I remembered Big Christmas was on our team. I don't think I would
Well,
have
he
known
hasn't
that
been on our
2
team
weeks
most of the
ago.
season, Mike. He came
He
up with a
hasn't.
four. He's been in
Where
AAA
was
because he started the season on the team and he was batting so terribly. They sent him to AAA and they only brought him up because the 40-man roster expanded.
Okay, well, he's still whatever. He was in the organization at least.
Yeah, yeah.
There are a
He's
few
been in your.
guys there are a few guys I never heard of. So, but yeah, tied with the Tigers and owning the tiebreaker over the Tigers too. So really effectively a game ahead.
Well, here's
Kind
what
of a
ultimately, if we somehow sweep the series, okay, there's all the Guardians have to do is win one game this weekend, and
nice.
they win the division. If they tie, and the problem that the Tigers have is they're playing Boston this weekend, so Boston's fighting for a playoff spot too. So it's not like they're going to roll over and die. Whereas the team that we're playing this weekend is going to roll over and die. They've already shut down like 4 of their players because they're out of the playoffs. So once again, that doesn't necessarily equate to wins especially in baseball. It's not like basketball
Correct.
where you're sitting all your stars. It's different. But anyways, so I'm excited. Next Tuesday. I don't know. It might be hard for us to podcast next Tuesday because there's probably gonna be a baseball game going on. Like I don't know. It's gonna be
You'll have
interesting.
to just
We might turn it
you'll
to a
have to
base.
just set you'll just set it over. You'll just have to set it over here on the side next to your computer. That's just what you'll have to do.
Yeah.
So
Anyways, all right, cool.
one
So
way or the other. We're gonna have a celebration next week.
next week,
You know we're having a
we're gonna have a celebration. I guess should we just knock out the other Cleveland sports team while we're at it at the top, and then we can
well
just
wait,
dive.
you're gonna blow over my celebration?
What do you mean the Browns?
No, has nothing to do with the Browns, man. It has to do with your co-host next
Oh,
next
next.
Tuesday.
Oh, it'll be a coach. You're retired. He's officially
Next
retired.
Tuesday next Tuesday I'll be officially retired. How about
Officially
that?
retired. Retired,
I don't know. We're gonna have
looking for work. He's gonna be panhandling in the streets of Strongsville.
there's gonna be, we're gonna have to come up with some type of retirement. There's gonna have to be some kind of retirement theme for next week's show. I don't know what it's
Well,
gonna
no,
be.
I've already got it, Mike. The
You've
retirement
already
is
got it.
the best retirement game, the best last games of NBA players' history. I mean, we already know what number one is, but I think we can talk about the greatest retirement games in NBA history, like the going out with like swan song games or something like that. Or maybe we, I don't know. Let's workshop that a little bit. But I mean, we know
Can we
Kobe's going
for,
to be number one. Kobe's number one
can
for
we
sure. But
can we forget about the Wizards?
no,
No,
he unretired.
you're not. Well, he retired though. We
He
can count that
unretired.
as his
No,
retirement. We
you
can
cannot,
count
he
that
did not.
as
No,
we can't.
no,
Come on, come on.
no, man.
No.
No, man.
All right. Well, anyway, all right. We'll get to that. We'll have to put our crack research staff on figuring that one out. So, but yeah, a week from today, retired, and today hernia surgery, and here I am, man, playing hurt. This is my flu game
Listen.
tonight.
It reminds me of the time that I went to Head Start basketball and you called me. I had a broken finger and I can't. And my mom told me that I wasn't allowed to play. And then you at those times it was not wasn't as
We
strictly
weren't
as
as politically
enforced.
correct.
It wasn't as
Yeah, we
strictly
weren't
as
as politically
enforced. And,
correct.
and you're calling the game in the hot box at Center Middle School, and you say, "Oh, Jason's coming out for a Jordan flu game like performance." And I still
That's right.
remember this to the day. It had to be my 6th grade year. But yeah, anyways, so there you go. See the things that stick with me. I remember that still to the day in the hot box at Center Middle School, Mike.
See, it's a theme that we've talked about many times with many coaches, that the things that we say as coaches, as teachers, as camp directors, as referees, you never know when a kid is going to remember something that you might have no recollection of had they not remembered it. And so it's always important to remember the things you say, that they have a huge outsized impact, a huge weight that they carry with people that you talk to. And your
Yeah.
story right there is one that you're going to still have that story in your head when you're 97 years old. And
Well, hopefully
again,
I'm A, alive when I'm 97, and B, that I
that's
can
right.
remember, again, we can remember it. Okay. We've gone into
AI is going to take care of you, man. Don't worry.
AI
You're
is gonna
good.
take.
You're
Okay,
good.
but anyways, let's just kill the other thing while we're at it. The Browns.
Okay. Yeah.
The most, I'm going to tell my Browns, the most Brownsy thing could have ever happened to me. My dad and I are in this pool where we pick winners and losers and all this stuff. And every week we have to pick a survivor and a born to lose until we are eliminated. And I picked my born to lose was the Browns because I thought there was no chance in heck they were going to win the game. So the most Brownsy thing happened to me. I picked them into my born to lose, and they lost. Or they won. So there you go. Thanks, Browns, and those Brownsia fashions for ruining that. But hey, at least that's one. My dad always says when we get eliminated from this every single year, hey, one less thing we have to pick.
That's right. Anti Brownsy. That was the most anti Brownsy game you could possibly ever have. Typically, the Browns would be on
And
the other
we're
end of that
one kick away
equation.
from being 2-1 and in first place in our division.
Absolutely. And Cincinnati, without Burrow, you got to figure they're going to be terrible. Pittsburgh is terrible, and the Ravens are 1-2. I don't think they're terrible, but they're 1-2. And look, our offense can't score, so the defense has to hold teams to like under 14 points. Any scoring over 14, I think the Browns are going to lose. So it doesn't look good from an offensive football standpoint. But
Well,
the defense, I would say, through 3 games has
who do we
been.
play this? Oh, we play Detroit this weekend, Mike. Your
We
heart is
do, we
your
do.
heart is.
I don't think it's gonna.
4-2.
I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's gonna go well for the Browns.
Hey, listen.
I don't think
As
it'll.
long as the Indians or the Guardians are ahead of the Detroit Tigers, then I will gladly concede the Detroit Lions victory.
Okay,
You know, but
probably fair. Probably fair.
and I will
When
gladly
when
take it too because I've got multiple player on the Lions on my fantasy teams. So let's just
okay.
keep that in mind.
All right. One last Browns question. At what point and with what record do the Browns play Dylan Gabriel? Easy for me to say. Dylan Gabriel
Well, so
or
here's
Shador.
the interesting point. Now that we beat the Packers, okay,
Right.
because
Right.
I think my original thought was when we're 0-6 and we've gone through the gauntlet to start the season, that's when they're going to bring in Dylan Gabriel or whatever. But here's the problem.
Yeah.
Next week we play Detroit this week. That's probably a loss. That's 1-3. And then the next week we go into London and we play Minnesota. Okay. So that's just going to be a weirdo game. Now they're playing in Dublin this week. So they're already going to be like time change situation figured out. But listen, all these international games, it's wacky. It's probably going to be like a 4. I'm going to guess the line with Cousin Sal right now. I'm going to guess that the line is probably in that game, not knowing the results of the upcoming games, is probably going to be like Minnesota 4.5, but also understanding that Carson Wentz probably is the quarterback, and we've seen the Carson Wentz show before. So like originally I would have thought that this Minnesota game was a for sure loss, but it's just a hinky game in England. So then you're walking into Pittsburgh too. I think we play with Pittsburgh week 6. We walk into Pittsburgh 2-3, and if we somehow eke out a victory and we're 3-3 with Joe Flacco at the helm, you can't take him out. Okay. Now, if we walk out of Pittsburgh and we're 1-5 and we've lost all the next 3 games, then I can start to say, okay, well, listen, if we could have, at least had some kind of an offensive change, maybe we could, do something if the defense continues to play. Once again, I don't know that that's going to work against Detroit this week, but the next 2 weeks, I think, if we get any pressure on Aaron Rodgers, he's going to fold like a cheap tent because he's an old man. It's like, like you trying to guard Cal playing basketball. It's not going to probably go very well. Not that you were probably a better basketball player when you were his age, but at this point in your life, you're not a better basketball player than Cal is, because especially because you had surgery today. So I think Aaron Rodgers is not very mobile, and I think that's the question. And where are we after the Steelers game? If we are 3-3, I think Joe Flacco is the quarterback still. If we are 2-4, it's probably still leaning towards Joe Flacco. But if we're 1-5, I think it's time for the Dylan Gabriel show. And I think the other thing to kind of think about too is Joe Flacco's 41. And listen, I thought Flacco was great in the first game, by the way. I thought he played really, really well week 1. Like you said, he wasn't explosive, but he did enough to win us that game. The kicker screwed it for us, all right? He redeemed himself this weekend. But the last 2 weeks, Flacco has not been very good. He's not, but there's also the problem that he's getting no time because the line has been terrible. And now DeJuan Jones is out with us. You saw he's out for the season because he's got to have knee surgery or something. So I don't think Joe Thomas is walking through that door for our line. So the question then becomes, is Joe Flacco going to survive the next 3 weeks? Because he's going to get killed and he's 40 years old. And I know that if I got tackled I'm 38. I know that if I got tackled by a 280-pound big guy who's 25 years old and is landing on me or keep getting hit by this guy, I know that, I know how I feel after I play one game of basketball on a Sunday with old men, I don't know what Flacco's health is going to look like after week 6, but I think that's the crux is I think week 6 is the check-in point. If they're 2-4 or 3-3, I think they're probably going to stick with him just because they probably should have won week 1. And like I said, I can't prognosticate based past that because I don't know what the schedule is after that, but I know we got Carolina somewhere. I know we got some other not so good teams. We do have other good teams. I think we can beat Chicago. I know they ran roughshod over them. This one team I don't know who they beat, but I think
beat the Cowboys.
I'm not really. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think week 6 is the crux, the point, and we're 12 minutes in. We haven't even started talking NBA yet, Mike. What do you think? What's your Browns thought?
So very simple on Flacco. I think as long as the Browns are in contention for a playoff spot and Flacco is mediocre, I think Flacco stays in the position. I think if the Browns drop out of the playoff race or he just completely is horrendous, then you see probably Dylan Gabriel is the way it looks. So I think Flacco has the job as long as the Browns hang around the fringes of the playoff race. And as long as he's playing mediocre football, I think he keeps the job. And
did you see the Giants already benched Russell Wilson today?
Yeah, it's not surprising. I mean, everybody was talking
3 games in, they benched him for the rookie.
Yeah, I mean, even in training camp, people were talking that Jackson Dart was maybe even outplaying him at that point.
Look at you up to date on these other quarterbacks. This is impressive.
I know some football, man. I could talk football. We could do a credible NBA NFL podcast if I spent an extra 30 minutes a week reading NFL stuff the way I read NBA stuff. We could have a semi-credible NFL podcast, but Let's save that for another day. All right, it's time for NBA.
All right, so there was a survey that went out. ESPN sent the survey out to GMs and people in front offices, right, Mike? That's who it was. Was it GMs or
correct?
Okay, so
I believe.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're not gonna like relitigate or re-talk much about what ESPN's findings were. We're just going to talk about if they sent it to us and we were the NBA GM, what would our responses be? And we're going to kind of go through this, and I'm just going to go in the order of what was on the ESPN article. So our listeners, if they want to pull up the companion piece on ESPN, then it will make sense and they don't have to jump around. Does that make sense to you, Mike?
That makes total sense.
Okay, so for MVP, Mike, if you were to make a prediction on who the MVP is going to be, who would you pick? I'm going to let you go first because I know what your answer is going to be. It's going to be different than my answer. Go ahead, Mike.
My answer is Jokic, and I think the reason why it's Jokic, to me, it's going to probably be either Shea or Jokic. If both of those guys are healthy, I think it's one of those two. I think the reason why it's Jokic is because you're shaking your head, but we'll hear what you have to say in a second. I think the reason why it's Jokic over SGA is because I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is my own perception or bias or whatever, but I feel like Jokic is now clearly ascended to a level where he is considered to be among the all-time great players, despite the fact that he's only won one title. He has the 3 MVPs, and I just feel like he has taken a leap in people's minds. There's not many people out there at this point where there were maybe 3 years ago where people were questioning how good Nikola Jokic is. There just isn't anybody questioning that he's not among the 20 best players in history. And if he continues on this trajectory, he's probably going to be knocking on the door of the top 10 at some point here. So I think there's a consensus to me around that. And then I think the second part of it is Shea won this past year. I feel like most people, probably myself included, feel like they are I don't want to know if overwhelming is the way to say it, but certainly they are the favorite, the clear favorite to win the title again this year. And I just think SGA has not elevated himself to the same level in terms of historical perspective that Jokic has. And as a result, I don't see people voting for Shea to win back-to-back MVPs, even if his team, I guess if the Thunder put the pedal to the metal and they win 70 regular season games and he has a similar season to what he had this year, it would be hard to deny him. But I think that Oklahoma City probably doesn't have as good of a regular season record this year just simply because they're a title team coming off a championship season. And so I feel like Shea's going to have a great year, maybe not statistically the same year that he had last year. And people aren't going to, it's the old narrative story that I just don't think people are going to give him 2 in a row. I don't think Oklahoma City is going to be that compelling of a narrative because everybody expects them to be good. And I think Denver, when you look at their playoff run last year, they beat the Clippers with some crazy games. Then you have the series against Oklahoma City that kind of goes back and forth. And basically people said, hey, the Denver Nuggets have to upgrade their roster. And so in the summertime, they make the trade for Cam Johnson, get Michael Porter Jr. out. They signed Tim Hardaway Jr. They signed Valanciunas. So basically they turned Michael Porter Jr. into 3 guys that can play in their rotation, that can be a part of the playoffs. And so I think Denver is going to have a good regular season. I think they're motivated. I think Jokic is still at the absolute peak of his powers. And I just think that he provides a better narrative than what Shea does. And another MVP for Jokic further cements him as an all-time great. So that's why I'm going with Jokic
Mike,
over
there's a better
SGA.
narrative. There's a better narrative.
Okay.
Hallelujah. Luka is the better narrative, Mike. It is 100% the better narrative. Okay, it's better. It's a better narrative because he's taking over the mantle from LeBron. This would further cement their legacy that LeBron is not the best player of all time, because Luka Doncic will win the MVP with him on his team. Okay, Luka Doncic is everything that I saw in Euro and the way that he was playing was old Luka Doncic. And I want to be clear here. I did not sit here and comb through, and I know we're talking about them playing Euro basketball, and we're talking about them not playing the same caliber as NBA players. I get it. I understand that. But he looks more like, all those years, the last 2 years we've been talking about, oh, look at Zion Williamson. He lost weight. He looks chiseled. And that's amounted to nothing. It's amounted to nothing. So I could be completely wrong. But Luka Doncic looks like he's in the best shape of his career in the last 3 or 4 seasons. He looks like he hasn't been eating as many sweet treats. He looks like he hasn't been smoking as many cigars. Maybe instead of riding ponies like Jokic does, he's been running and walking places, and he's just going to be ready to play basketball, and he's going to light it up, and it's going to help. It's going to 100% help to have LeBron on his team. I just fully believe that. I am not completely out on the Lakers if LeBron comes back and isn't a crybaby. I'm not completely out on the Lakers if LeBron comes back and isn't a drama queen. I am not completely out on the Lakers. I do not think they are a top 3 seed in the I think they're now probably a 4 or 5, depending on where Houston falls now with the Van Vliet situation. I think I'm not completely out on the Lakers, and if I have to go into the playoffs and I'm going to have to play against Luka and LeBron, I'm not thrilled about that as a team. I'm just not. Whether, you can talk about their defensive misgivings at, that point, but I wouldn't be thrilled about it. So I'm saying my MVP for this season, and maybe it's my fanboyism and my love for Luka Doncic and how much I've missed the Luka Doncic I've been seeing in Euro basketball. I'm gonna take Luka as my MVP for the upcoming NBA season because the narrative is fantastic. Luka in LA with LeBron. That's a better narrative than Jokic in Denver with Deion Sanders. Like, get me out of there, and SGA in Oklahoma City. Who cares about that guy? Luka Doncic in LA, baby. I'm gonna tell you right now, no one's starting the highlights with the Oklahoma City Thunder this season. No one's starting the highlights with the Jokic. Sports Center. What's going to be leading Sports Center every single week? The Cavs aren't going to get that much publicity. It's going to be LeBron and Luka's going to win the MVP. Done.
You really are a Lakers homer, man. Holy cow. Like, you love the Lakers. I can't wait to hear you pick them to win the Western Conference.
Oh,
You're
I'm
gonna
not
be like,
picking them to
they're
win the West. I'm not
oh
picking them
well
to win
they're
the West.
well they're you got them. They're gonna be a 4 or 5 seed, so I'm sure you got them running roughshod through the Western Conference playoffs. I know what's
Oh,
coming, man. I can feel it already. Luka MVP season, LeBron gonna have the best over 40 season in the history of the league.
he has already
Rui
had the
Hachim,
best over 40 season in the NBA history, hasn't he?
Well, he's gonna have. Well, that's what I'm saying. You're
He's
expecting him to
already.
have
He's
an
going to
even
beat
better.
his last season.
You're
I mean,
expecting, yeah, you're expecting him to have an even better season this year. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Where's he going to sign? Which we're going to get to in a few minutes. So where's he going to be next year?
okay.
I can
So
only
ask me.
wait.
Let's ask the next question. Who's the best player in the NBA?
Well, hold
It's
on.
Jokic.
I want to. Can I address your Luka thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the caveat, I don't disagree with the premise of what you're saying in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, Luka last year injured. The trade happens. The first time in 5 seasons that he isn't first team all NBA. So clearly you're talking about a guy who is one of the 5 best players in the league. And you could probably argue that he hasn't been in peak physical condition maybe since his rookie season. And so if what we saw in his workouts and in Eurobasket in terms of his level of dedication and seriousness to his conditioning is going to carry over into training camp and throughout the regular season, obviously that's going to put him on a different plane. If his conditioning isn't going to be holding him back, if he can be more explosive like he was when he was younger, if he can get that explosiveness back, and again, we're not talking about elite NBA explosiveness, but we're talking about a player who was much more quick twitch when he was a rookie and in his second year than he has been the last couple of years. So if you get that Luka, then clearly you're talking about a guy who is going to be in the MVP conversation, provided, as you said, that LeBron is bought in and that the Lakers play to what their capability is as a team. The concern with Luka is the track record tells you that that may not last. It may not hold in terms of him being in great shape and him being able to avoid injuries. So last year he played 50 games. The year before he played 70. The year before 66, 65, 66, 61. His rookie year he played 72. So with the 65 game cutoff, if you look at the history of his career, he's had 2 seasons where he didn't make it. He had 1 season where he had played 66 games, would have made it. 1 season where he played 65, and another season where he played 66 again. So he's been right on that cutoff for most of his career in terms of even being eligible for the MVP. Now, theoretically, him being in better shape and taking his conditioning more seriously should allow him to play more games and to be able to qualify and not have to worry about that 65 game limit. But if I'm going to poke a hole in your case for Luka, I can't poke it at Luka, the player, and what he's capable of doing. Clearly, he's a top 5 player in the league. And if you're one of the top 5 players in the league and you're playing on a good team, you have a chance to win the MVP. My only concern is you have to poke the holes with, is he going to be healthy? Is the conditioning real? Is he going to meet the threshold for playing in 65 games? That would be my only question. I don't think you're wrong, again, in terms of his ability and the way that it's set up. There is a good storyline there. I agree. I think when I go to the end of the season if I'm betting on which player is going to have a season closest to their best season ever, and my 3 guys that I'm ranking there are Jokic, SGA, and Luka, I'm putting Luka last on that list in terms of the guy who I think is gonna be the most likely to have a career season or be at his career averages. I think Luka, I would put him below that only because, again, of the injury risk. So,
Okay. All right. One topic down, Mike. All right.
perfect.
All right. So the best player in the NBA, I'm going to say Jokic.
Yeah, I think to me, this is a no-brainer. When you look at what he does offensively, when you look at just the way that you can generate an entire offense around him, through him, you look at his ability to score in the post, his ability to score from floater range, how well he shot the 3 last year. There's nothing that the guy doesn't do at the offensive end of the floor. And then the one area where you would say he's probably weak, if you look at a lot of the defensive metrics and analytics, they will tell you that Jokic is a better defensive player maybe than what the eye test says. I still don't know that I always buy those numbers. The eye test still tells me that he's a guy who is not a complete turnstile, but certainly is a guy that he's not a dominant defender in any way, shape, or form. At best, he's
He gets the
average,
job
and
done,
he's a
though.
right, and he has good hands, and he gets the strips, and he can poke balls away, and he's in the right place, and he's huge, and he defensive rebounds, all of which are part of being a good defensive player. But clearly, that's his weaker end of the floor. I
Yeah.
just think that if you put Nikola Jokic on any team, more so than probably any player in a long time, he just makes everybody on that team a better player. He brings out the best in his teammates, along with just being a statistical anomaly when you look at the history of the game, what he's been able to do from the center position, both as a scorer, as a passer, to say nothing of his rebounding. And then the fact that, again, he's just the center of everything that Denver does. And wherever he would be in his prime, it doesn't matter what team he was on or what teammates he had, he would be the center of that team's offensive universe. And you can guarantee that that team would have a quality offense and get good looks every time down the floor because he's right there with any basketball genius that you want to throw out there from the history of the league. So to me, I don't think it's close. And it's interesting because Jokic doesn't fit the definition or the picture of what we would normally think of as the guy being the best player. We would think of a guy on the wing or a guard or somebody who has all the skills in terms of being able to ball handle and shoot jump shots off the dribble. Jokic is just a completely different NBA superstar than anybody that we've ever seen play. Maybe there was somebody back in the 60s and 70s that played like Jokic, but I just don't think that the statistical anomaly that he is and the fact that he's not the running, jumping, athletic guy that we normally think of as being the best player in the league makes him even more unique. So I don't think there's even a question.
Yeah. All right. So then my answer for the next 3 questions is the same.
Okay.
So the next 3 questions: who's the best player in 2030? Who's the best American currently? And who's going to be the best American in 5 years? My answer is Anthony Edwards. I'm saying it. I think 5 years from now, he's going to be the best player in the NBA. I think he's the best American currently, and I think 5 years from now, he's the best American. And you know, the way that he plays on both ends of the floor, his hustle, he's only gotten better every year. I know, like, beginning of last year, he didn't have a great start to but I think he picked it back up as the year continued. I just think, when I look at, all these aging superstars like LeBron, Durant, all of them, they're going to be retiring. Who's most likely to take the mantle? Okay. I think Anthony Edwards has a chance to really take the mantle. You know, he's just so dynamic on both ends of the floor. He's just a hustler, plays hard. I think he's likable, even when he does stupid things. I think he's likable. And I just, I found myself tuning into Minnesota Timberwolves games last season that I probably in years past would not have been watching the Minnesota Timberwolves. And find myself tuning into a lot of Thunder games unless it was the only thing that was on. So, and obviously, SGA was in contention for maybe the best player in 2030. I guess who knows what Jokic is going to be, if he's even going to be in the league in 2030. Like, because he's talked about, or there's been rumors and thoughts that he doesn't care that much to play that many more years and things like that. So that's why I'm going Anthony Edwards. I think there's no doubt right now he's the best American. Someone might say like Steph Curry, but I think that he actually won that one, I think, in the survey. And I'm like, I don't know. I know he's a good shooter, but I think I would, if I was picking a player to American to start my franchise around, I think Anthony Edwards would be my first pick right now. I know it's probably an age thing too on that sense, but I wouldn't pick Steph Curry. So I have Anthony Edwards for all three of these, Mike.
All right, so let me talk about Anthony Edwards just for a second. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that I think you're wrong. I think Anthony Edwards is a very, very good choice for all three of those questions. I think the thing when you look at Edwards and you point to the positives of his game and the way that he has developed, he's a guy who went from, in his rookie season, he shot 32% from three on 7 attempts. And then he kind of stayed in that 7. He's right around between in his first 4 seasons, his low amount of 3-point attempts was 6.7. His high was 8.4. Last year, he jumped that up to 10.3 attempts per game, and he shot 39%. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe he led the league in three-pointers made because he played 79 games and he made 4 threes a game. And so I think he made the most threes. And certainly, I think when he came into the league, people thought that his three-pointer was going to be a weakness in his game rather than a strength. And so he has certainly turned that around. He shot 84% from the line. He's a good, I wouldn't say great rebounder for his size and position, but certainly a good rebounder. I think the one area that gives you pause when you start trying to figure out, is Anthony Edwards going to be able to ascend to be a top 5 player in the league, is his ability to play make and make other guys better with his passing. And if you look at last year, his assist to turnover ratio, he averaged 4.5 assists last year and 3.2 turnovers. When you look at the best guys that lead teams to championships, that ratio is not nearly as close as 1-to-1 as Anthony Edwards is too. And so when I think about him developing into that top tier, very best player in the league type of range, I start thinking about, can he play make and make other guys better at the level that some of the guys historically at his size have been able to do. And look, he's still very, very young. Came into the league at 19 years old. So right now we're talking he's 24 years old. And he still has a lot of years before he even gets to the main part of his prime. And part of it is with Minnesota. We've already seen them get to 2 straight Western Conference finals when Ant was 22, 23, 24, whatever he was in those playoff runs. And so maybe we've just accelerated him onto the stage a little bit faster than we've seen other guys historically get there. And so I think that the bet that you just made in answering that question is that Anthony Edwards, a basketball IQ and ability to improve his game and add things like all the great players have done throughout their career. He's shown that he can add things to his game. And if he continues to work on his passing, look, he's never going to be Jokic. He's not going to be Magic Johnson. The question is, can he get to the point where he's going to be a guy that can impact the game with his passing, get off the ball, do some things to make his teammates better. Right now, he's sort of in the stage where he can make the simple read, the simple next pass, when you start getting into that next level, it's where guys can start to manipulate the defense, or guys can start to move the defense with their eyes, with their fakes, with their body movements, and those kinds of things that what set great passers apart. Can he get to that level? I don't know. But I do know that his athleticism, his ability to shoot the ball, his ability to attack the basket, his ability to score, which is proven. He's improved his scoring average every single year of his career. Last year, he averaged a career high 27.6 points per game. I think it's definitely a fair answer, but what you're betting on is that he can develop as a playmaker. And then you also have to look at, well, who are the other people that potentially could be the best player? I think your guy Luka has a chance to be the best player still in 2030 if he's healthy. If this conditioning thing is real, and I think we're going to see if it's real through this season, if it's real and he commits to this for the rest of his career, could Luka, who's probably what, 26 maybe, be 31 in 2030? Is it conceivable Luka could be the best player? Shea obviously is young and already has an MVP and a championship, and who knows, maybe another one waiting for him at the end of this season, and maybe multiple as you look at the way the Thunder are set up. Could it be him? It's possible. I don't think any of the old guard or semi old guard probably will be the best player. You've got the tantalizing potential of Victor Wembanyama, but I would double down hard on the I don't necessarily trust Victor Wembanyama to stay healthy throughout his career. That's what would worry me in picking him. I think I would probably honestly, I think I'd pick Luka. I just think Luka has, despite the fact that I just poked a bunch of holes in your MVP case, I do think that there's no doubt that even when he hasn't been in the best of condition, he's been one of the 5 best players in the league. And if he can get back to doing some of the things from a conditioning standpoint at a high level, I think it just allows him to perform in such a way that he will have a great chance. So I'm going to take Luka for who will be the best player in 2030. Best American player right now, that's a tough one. I think the case for Anthony Edwards is pretty strong. I think if you're saying who do you want for the future moving forward, I think you'd have a hard time not taking the future of Anthony Edwards over anybody else. I think if you just want a guy for next season, then you can start to making a case that Steph Curry and his shooting and all the things that he does, and just like we talked about with Jokic, his ability to impact everything that goes on the floor by manipulating the defense, by swaying the geometry of the floor with his shooting. All those things are so impactful and allows you to do things as an offensive team that most teams cannot do simply because they don't have a player of Steph's caliber. But you might be right there on the Edwards one. I don't even know beyond those 2 guys.
Donovan Mitchell
I don't
got
even,
one vote.
yeah, and they mentioned Tatum, who obviously is hurt, so he doesn't qualify there. I don't. It's kind of interesting when you look at again, and I know we've talked about this before, but I mean, just the foreign domination of the MVP and sort of the top the top echelon of the league, the top echelon of the players. Certainly, the top 4 guys. I don't think there's any doubt that the top 4 guys in the league, when you talk Jokic, SGA, Giannis, and who am I now? Why did I just draw a blank on my 4th guy? Shea are
Shea, yeah.
right. Shea, Jokic, Giannis. Who's my other guy? Why am I drawing a blank on who? And Luka.
Luka?
So those, yeah, sorry, those 4. I think those 4 in whatever order you want to put them on. Those 4 guys are the best 4 guys in the league. And then after that, you can start making debates about where different guys fall. But those guys clearly are the 4, I think, best players in the league currently. So the best American is kind of an interesting question. I guess I'll go with your guy Edwards at this point, because I do think that if you put Edwards on your team, he's only going to continue to get better. Steph, I think is only going to continue to get worse. Sounds bad, but I think Steph's on the downside of his career, as good as he still is. And I think even for next season, I'd probably take Anthony Edwards first. And then who will be the best American player in 5 years? I think Edwards is probably the safest bet. I know that on the ESPN survey, a couple people took Cooper Flag. I don't know how you can take a guy who hasn't even played one game in the NBA to know what he's going to be. And I know that there's a consensus that he's going to be that type of player, but all you got to do is look at Zion Williamson and how excited we were about him and what people thought he was going to be. And to put money on a guy or answer that that guy's going to be the best in 5 years, he could very well be. But if I'm picking somebody, I think Anthony Edwards is the safest bet. And like I said, his improvement and adding to his game gives you hope. I just think that the one skill that he lacks is probably the hardest one to develop, because that passing and being able to impact games as a passer, I think that's the hardest thing to develop as a player. You can become a better shooter, you can become a better dribbler, you can commit to being a better defensive player, you can add things in the post, and there's just a million things that you can add offensively when you have the ball in your hands. I think it's a little bit harder to add that passing basketball IQ gene. It's one of those things that either you have it at a super high level or you don't. But I'm going to bet on Anthony Edwards continuing to improve that to the point where he's a plus passer, maybe not an A plus plus, but that he's a plus passer just because I think he's proven through his career that he's going to work. So I guess I have best player in 2030, Luka, best American player right now, Anthony Edwards, and best American player in 5 years, Edwards. So Edwards sweeps this category except for me with one Luka vote there.
Okay. All right. So then I guess it was a nice segue. You talked about Cooper Flag, rookie of the year. I think it's for sure Cooper Flag. And who's the best rookie in 5 years? I think it's for sure Cooper Flag. Once again, we're prognosticating based on a rookie situation that we don't know. I think what would be interesting is having this discussion after his rookie season and does he live up to the heights, or even and revisiting this in a few years, hey, is Cooper Flag the real deal or not? Because like you said, Zion that was a prognostication that he was going to be a generational talent, and the only thing he's been is a generation disappointment because of his lack of injury conditioning, or his lack of ability to play because of conditioning, injury, a phase, whatever it is. I think that's ultimately, obviously Cooper Flag is seemingly doing all the right things, and it's just crazy that he ended up in Dallas and, now is going to be with, theoretically when Kyrie's healthy and Anthony Davis, that team could be pretty good, right? Right away. So it'll be interesting to see. I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons with him and Wemby, about how much of an impact he makes. And obviously they're two different players. And I think obviously Wemby's the better defender than Cooper Flag. But once again, we're going to be in a weird situation with Wemby here. If something happens this year and he gets hurt or the team's not that good, we're going to be like, okay, so he's this good, but is this Zion 2.0 or is he going to be able to come back from this? Whereas, Cooper Flag, the jury's kind of out and he's kind of, we've got a fresh tank. So I'm going to say Cooper Flag for Rookie of the Year and for 5 years from now. And I guess give myself the right to revisit this at the end of the first season to see if I still think Cooper Flag has the ability to be the best player in 5 years.
So I think Cooper Flag is the answer to both of these two questions for sure. I think he's going to be the Rookie of the Year. I think he'll be the best player from this class of 2025, based on, again, what we've seen to this point in their careers. Clearly, none of these guys have set foot on an NBA floor. So until we see it, we obviously have no idea. I think the interesting thing with Cooper Flag is the fact that he is a white American player who was drafted overall number one. And I think at some point, if it was this summer or last spring when we were talking about Cooper Flag, we discussed the last American white player to go number 1 overall in the NBA draft, and I believe it was Kent Benson in 1977 out of Indiana University. And so to me, that makes Cooper Flagg's situation even more interesting in a sense of what he is and who he is something that has not turned into a superstar player for a very long time. Let's put it that way, where we've had a guy really, you're talking since Larry Bird, of a white American player who has ascended to become a top 5 player in the league, which when people start talking about Cooper Flagg as a generational talent, that's what he's been mentioned with, right? Those are the guys that he's
Yeah.
being talked about as being in that class. And we haven't seen a white American player live up to that level of standard in a long time. So I think that's going to be super interesting. I think the other thing with Flagg that's interesting is he goes into Dallas and Kyrie is injured. And so right now, the de facto starting point guard on the Dallas Mavericks is D'Angelo Russell. But there's been a lot of buzz coming out of Dallas that the Mavericks may hand the ball to Cooper Flagg and let him be the point guard or the ball handler or the point forward for that team, and him be the main pick and roll ball handler and him having a lot of responsibility on ball, which is going to develop him. I don't know that that's his natural position. When Cooper Flagg first burst on the scene, he was actually, I think, probably known more for his ability on the defensive end of the floor as a shot blocker and just a guy that was intimidating. And then his offensive game over the last year or two of his high school career, and then on into that first year at Duke, his offensive game really came around. But it's interesting that he more than likely is going to be playing at least some, I don't want to say out of position, but playing in a position that he hasn't spent a ton of time in his basketball career getting reps at the point guard position. So it will help him in the long run. Will he struggle to some degree in that role in the NBA, being that he hasn't played a ton of point guard or ball handling? He just hasn't done that a ton in his career. He did more of it at Duke than he ever had as a high school player. But I think clearly he's walking into a situation where he's going to be given a lot of responsibility, which on the one hand is very good for his development. On the other hand, we may see some struggles. He's also going to play a lot, which is important if you're going to be the rookie of the year. You got to get a lot of minutes. You got to be able to put up some stats to win that award. And then clearly, if you go in as the favorite, that helps. So then you talk about who's going to be the best in 2025. People are talking about Cooper Flagg as a generational talent. If he lives up to that hype, clearly he's going to be the best player in 5 years. I think the other guy that probably would get consideration is the number 2 pick, Dylan Harper. He's got the pedigree. His dad, Ron Harper, longtime NBA player, started his career here in Cleveland from Miami of Ohio. And Harper is also in an interesting situation positionally, the same way Cooper Flagg is, because Dylan Harper, point guard, guy who has played pretty much his entire career with the ball in his hands, is now on a team with De'Aaron Fox, who is a all-star point guard, a guy who's made an all-NBA team, a guy who the Spurs just paid $226 million, I believe, in a contract extension. So De'Aaron Fox is clearly going to play. And when De'Aaron Fox is in the game, he's going to have the ball in his hands. And then you have Victor Wembanyama, who, like you said, if he stays healthy and plays up to his potential, he's going to be a guy that you're going to want to have the ball in his hands a lot. And so Dylan Harper, in that case, at least as a rookie, he's going to be at best the third guy with the ball in his hands. And so for a guy who's used to having it all the time, how's he going to adapt and adjust to that? And I would say that one of the things that when you look at Dylan Harper's game that people would say, I don't know that he's a poor catch and shoot 3-point shooter, but I think his strength is having the ball in his hands, getting to the rim, being able to create for other people, and just having him standing on the perimeter, watching De'Aaron Fox penetrate and kick, or watching Wemby out on the perimeter shoot threes off the dribble. I don't know that that's the best use of Dylan Harper's talent. And it'll be interesting to see that potentially if they can figure out a way to use those guys together, right? Plus, you also have Stephon Castle in San Antonio. So how are you going to play all three of those guys together? What does this iteration of the Spurs look like? But potentially, when you look at Dylan Harper's situation, 5 years from now, he could be a guy that is on a championship team. Whereas 5 years from now, we have no idea what the Dallas Mavericks are going to look like. They're not going to look anything like the roster that they have today. Whereas the best four players on the San Antonio Spurs could still be the best four players on the San Antonio Spurs in 2030. So that would be the case for Dylan Harper, that he is part of a championship nucleus and he develops in a winning environment versus Cooper Flagg may develop in a dysfunctional environment that eventually turns into a rebuild as he's approaching his prime in 2030.
Yeah. Both fair points. All fair points. All right. The question we've all been waiting for, Mike. Where's LeBron next offseason? After next offseason? I'm going to let you go first.
This is tough. It's really tough. I think there's a part of me that says he left Cleveland to go to LA because he wanted to be in Los Angeles. He wanted to live in Los Angeles for the long term. It's where his business interests were. For whatever reason, that's where he wanted to live. And I don't think that has changed in terms of his vision for his family and just what he wants his life to look like moving forward. That being said, there is talk currently that LeBron could potentially retire at the end of the season, which if he retires, he's obviously going to live in LA for the remainder of his life, I would guess. And if he's going to retire or if he's considering retiring at the end of this season and then he reconsiders and decides to play, he's clearly not going to his next stop, wherever that might be, with the idea that he's going to play there for the long term. So I guess my point is that he could go play in another season next year if that was going to be his last season somewhere else.
But there's only two options. It's LA or it's Cleveland. Those are the only two options, in my opinion. If he plays next season, he's only going to go to LA or Cleveland. He's not going to go anywhere else.
So here's the question that I think you have to answer in order to definitively say that. I think you're 100% right that those are the three most likely outcomes are the Lakers, the Cavs, or he retires. I think those are the three most likely options. The only caveat to that, and LeBron's history would tell you that the chances of this happening are probably 0%. Maybe you'd have to go 0.00001%. But if LeBron were to decide, I really want to win one more title, and he just decided and looked at and said, where do I want to go? Where could I play where I could join a team that is a title favorite? And now you're looking at pick whatever team you want heading into next season that you think is going to be a title contender. Could he go inside? I'm not saying he would do this. The chances of it are very, very slim. Could he go and sign and play with the Nuggets? Could he go and sign and play with the Thunder? Could he go and sign and say, hey, I'm going to go and play with whoever, the Knicks? Could
Dallas,
he do any of those things?
Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving.
Would he be willing to do that and play on a veteran's minimum contract? LeBron's history would say there's no way he would do that. But if you get to the point where you're LeBron and you say, this is the last year, I know at the end of the season, I'm going to retire. So I know that if I go and play in another city besides Los Angeles, I'm living in that city for 8 months or 9 months or whatever it is. So from October to June, I'm going to go and I'm going to live in Denver, or I'm going to go and live in Dallas. Could he do that and sign for a veteran's minimum in a different place just in order to be able to try to win another title? Again, the history of LeBron would tell you, no, he wouldn't do that. But I think you have to hold that out as a very, very small possibility. Again, with the idea that it would be a 1 year, I'm going to retire at the end of the season. I'm trying to get one more championship on my resume to bolster my case as the greatest player of all time. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't. However, I'm going to say that LeBron James is going to be a Cleveland Cavalier at the start of the 26-27 season.
You are coming
I
to the
don't think this
side.
I don't think here's why. Here's why. I don't see the possibility of him signing for a minimum somewhere that he hasn't been, that he doesn't want to be. It adds a third uniform. I'm sorry, it adds a fourth uniform to his legacy. I don't
He
think
doesn't
that
want
he
the Hakeem
necessarily
Olajuwon Toronto Raptors uniform and
right. Now, look, LeBron's probably going to be playing at a higher
or the
level than
Michael
most of the
Jordan
guys.
Wizard uniform.
Right. I don't think LeBron is going to be playing at the level that Hakeem was playing at in Toronto. And he's going to be playing on a better team than what Michael was playing on in Washington. But I don't think, contrary to your Lakers optimism, I've been saying it for years and years and years that I don't see a situation where LeBron is going to defer to another player. I just don't, as good as Luka may be, and if he wins the MVP, I don't think LeBron's going to be happy in that scenario. And so I think he's going to leave the Lakers. And as you said, I think the only thing that makes sense is for him to come back to Cleveland. To bolster my other point, Cleveland is one of the places that he could argue that he's ring chasing, right? That he's going to a team that, if you add LeBron James to it, could be a legitimate title contender. They're probably a legit title contender heading into next season, even without LeBron. Who knows how this season plays out for the Cavaliers? But either they're going to get to the NBA Finals, or they're going to have some major changes happening with their roster. And if they make major changes, you're still going to have Mobley and Mitchell there for sure. You're talking about probably Garland and Allen making changes there. And then you add LeBron to that mix. I just think that he's not going to be happy in LA. If he's not happy in LA, I don't think he's going to retire off a year where it didn't go the way he wanted it and it wasn't in his control. And I think if he comes to Cleveland, he's going to feel like he has some control, or at least he's going to be universally loved in making that move, which I think will be important to LeBron at that point. And I just don't see him going anywhere else.
Yeah, I think it's Cleveland. And if it's not Cleveland, he retires. I don't think he's staying with the Lakers. I think it's Cavs or retirement, and that's it. Honestly, I just don't. So, all right, we want to kind of do a quick rush through the last three.
Yeah, let's go quick. Yep, let's go quick.
Okay, best offseason. I originally had Houston until I heard that Van VanVleet had tore his ACL. That's the best move, which is the third category. So I guess I'll lump these two together. Was the Durant trade, I think, because in a vacuum, if Van VanVleet doesn't tear his ACL, I think this is the best move. But now that he's torn his ACL, I don't know. I mean, I guess Houston might still have the best offseason, but they really just added Durant. You could make an argument for Atlanta, maybe. Like, Atlanta added Porzingis, but Luke Kennard, what is it? Alexander Walker. They signed all them, I guess. But Atlanta's not like – Atlanta wasn't going to a title contender here with their moves. Whereas Houston, I feel like theoretically this would have bolstered their title contention. But now with Fred VanVleet's ACL tear, I don't know. So that's what I had for best offseason, and then best move was Houston until Fred VanVleet. And I mean, I guess Atlanta, you could maybe argue Orlando, but I mean, Desmond Bane is not Durant. Okay. So I think it's got to be Houston probably. But I don't know if it really rings true now that VanVleet's hurt.
So I think you have to go with, in this situation, I think you have to talk about, unless it's like a crazy, unbelievable pickup by some team. If the Doncic trade occurs in the offseason, then it's clearly the Lakers, right? But that occurs
Yeah.
during the season, so it doesn't matter. But the Lakers still aren't or weren't title contenders even by adding Luka. So when I look at the best offseason, I'm looking at teams like what did teams do who have a legitimate chance to win the title? What did those teams do to get better? And so that for that reason, I would rank it. I think the Nuggets had the best offseason because they were a team that was clearly short on depth. And although I don't think that any of the three guys that they added are incredible top three players on their team, guys who are gonna they're guys who add to their depth, which is what they were lacking. So we're talking Tim Hardaway Jr.,
Yeah.
Valanciunas, and Cam Johnson. All three of those guys are going to have a role to play for Denver in the regular season and also have a role to play for Denver in the postseason. And as a team that pushed the Thunder as far as anybody else in the playoffs, that were they were that close and won a title 3 years ago and got to the Western Conference Finals the year before, or I guess the year after they won the title, but a year ago, a year removed from this year. To me, I just think those moves make Denver into a legitimate title threat to be able to knock off the Thunder this year. Then I would put the Rockets two. Clearly, they were the 2 seed, adding Durant, who just continues like a metronome to bang out 25-point high efficiency type seasons. With Durant, you know what you're getting from him. There's obviously some injury risk and some age risk when it comes to Durant and maybe some chemistry risk, but his ability to shoot the ball, there's nobody more frightening when you're cheering against him or playing against his teams. There's nobody that you fear more shooting the ball. Every time that guy shoots, I've said it so many times, every time he shoots, I feel like it's going in. And so for Houston to add a guy of that caliber that fit a perfect need for what they had, who becomes a very important player for the Houston Rockets, who had basically no role last year, is Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd
Yeah.
will definitely now at this point get an opportunity
Unless you
to
can flip it for Derek White, as suggested on the Bill Simmons pod.
possible. I mean, look, Houston may try to do something, but the fact of the matter is, whatever they do, even if they don't hand the reins to Reed Shepherd, which that's probably pretty unlikely that they just give him the ball and make him the point guard, he's certainly at worst going to have a bigger role than what anybody in Houston anticipated,
Yeah.
regardless of what they do. Even if they were to somehow trade for Derek White, Reed Shepherd, I think he was going to get minutes this year anyway, but without Van Vliet, he's clearly going to become an important part of their rotation. If he doesn't, then I'm not sure what Reed Shepherd's career is ultimately going to be. And then the third best offseason, and I don't know if you'd consider this team a legitimate title contender, but because of the East and the way it's sort of structured, I do think that Desmond Bane, although he's a good player, not a great player, he does fit very, very well with what Orlando needed. And if you look at Orlando's roster, if Franz and Paolo continue to improve and Jalen Suggs come back from injury, what that team has done defensively, and certainly Bane continues to add to that with Bane and Suggs as your two backcourt guys, the level of toughness and shooting that those two guys bring to the table. I don't think Orlando is better than the Cavs or the Knicks, but certainly playing the Orlando Magic next spring in the playoffs will not be a fun series for anybody. So
did you have any consideration for the Cavs or not?
No, not really. I mean, when you consider
getting Lonzo, bringing Larry Nance Jr., signing Thomas Bryant, and did you see the other news today?
I didn't see any of
Killian Hayes is going to be a Cavalier as well.
Nice. All right. Kevin O'Connor will be excited.
I'm just saying, so I don't know if that. I mean,
I think the thing you have to look at with the Cavs, I think in a vacuum, the Lonzo for Isaac Okoro that's a huge home run in any way, shape, or form. But again, Lonzo's injury history tells you that you have to temper your enthusiasm. If Lonzo is healthy, that trade is so unbelievably lopsided. It's incredible because again, Isaac Okoro has proven in the playoffs the last 3 years that you just can't play him. He cannot be on the floor in a playoff series. And Lonzo's going to bring size on the defensive end. He brings passing. He's a guy that people like to play with. If he's healthy, that is so much of an upgrade that it's laughable. I think the one thing that downgrades the Cavs offseason, although it's probably not, I don't look at it as big of a loss, but losing Ty Jerome, at least over the course of an 82 game regular season, what Ty Jerome did for the Cavs last year was tremendous in the regular season. And then he just stunk out the joint against the Pacers and was terrible. So it kind of mitigates the loss of Jerome because he really wasn't an effective playoff player at all for the Cavs. So I think the Cavs have had a good offseason. I don't know that it ranks among the top, but certainly for what this team is and sort of the limitations that they had, I like adding Nance to the roster. I think re-signing Sam Merrill was a good decision. I just think that they've done some good things. The thing with the Cavs is that, and we'll talk about it more, and we've already talked about it, the regular season for Cleveland next year is borderline meaningless because they just have to do something in the playoffs. I mean, they have to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And in all honesty, I know the Knicks are better and they improved their bench, but the reality is the Cavs won 64 games last year. They should be the best team in the East. They should represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. And if they don't, the season's going to be a massive disappointment.
Okay. So is best move? Who's the best move? I guess you can say that really.
I think
Is it Durant?
I think getting Durant is number one, and then I think probably when you look at it just from an individual move standpoint, then I think getting Bane for the Magic is probably the second most important thing. But the Rockets getting Durant, you get off Jalen Green, who clearly was not a part of the Rockets' future, and Dylan Brooks is what he is. I don't think that. Look, he brings some things to the table, but I don't think any team is crying when Dylan Brooks gets shipped out the door, especially not for a guy as good as what Durant is. And Durant fit exactly what Houston needed in terms of a guy that you could isolate and score and get you buckets at the end of games, which the Rockets just didn't have. It's gonna be fun to watch him play next to Amen Thompson. Let's put it that way. Those two guys, it's gonna be interesting to see that combo out on the floor, what they can do together.
All right. The worst offseason move, Mike. The Clippers re-signing James Harden.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true, especially at the number that they
I went with
re-signed
a little
him for.
tongue-in-cheeky.
No, that's. I mean,
What was
look, I think you're 100% right. I don't know that I would argue against that in any
Was that
way,
what you had
shape, or
written
form.
down? Did you have that written down?
I did, in all honesty, because I think it's funny because if you look at the ESPN list, clearly signing James Harden is not on that list. And when you look at what Harden's production was in the regular season as a borderline all NBA guy, anybody who's, if you just look at it objectively, you could make a case that there's no problem with the Clippers re-signing James Harden. But when you look at it subjectively, the way we look at it, and I've said it over and over and over again, I don't care what James Harden does for you in the regular season. I don't care what kind of stats he's going to put up for you. When push comes to shove, if your franchise is trying to win NBA playoff games and win an NBA championship, you can't have James Harden be an integral part of your team. You just can't. He's not going to be there in the biggest, most impactful moments. He's not going to show up. And it's been proven over and over and over again. And it's not like that's going to change at age 36. We could also say that the worst offseason move belongs to the Clippers in making an investment in aspiration and having the whole Kawhi situation happening. And who knows, that thing, it's going to be so interesting to see what the punishment is for what the Clippers theoretically have done and how long it takes the NBA to.
I liked the idea of send him to Seattle. I thought that was make him build a new dome. I don't know who said that, but I thought that was funny.
Yeah. Well,
is that Joe House?
With the whole,
is that House?
Ballmer with the whole connection to Seattle, and probably wouldn't be a terrible thing. Look, the Clippers clearly had the worst offseason when you factor in this whole Kawhi thing. And then I know nobody else would say that signing Harden is a terrible move, but you and I are clearly in lockstep that anytime your team is signing James Harden, that definitely qualifies for the worst move of the offseason, regardless of what kind of regular season production you're going to get from him. So.
All right. So the only other questions, we're not going to answer them tonight. Where the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference and who's going to win the NBA championship. I actually didn't even scroll that far down in the article because I didn't want to see what everyone said. But we're going to make our predictions on the last episode prior to the NBA season. So here we are. It's September 23rd now when you're listening to this. And or September 24th when you're listening to it, because it's September 23rd right now while we're recording it. We're a month away. The NBA season starts in 5 weeks from today. The NBA season starts, Mike. Can you believe it?
It's crazy. It's coming very fast. So we'll have to do
the NBA season will be starting. The Brown season will be in the toilet, and the Guardians will be approaching the World Series. That's what we're going to be saying. What do you say, Mike? Does that sound like a good plan?
Fingers crossed, brother. Let's hope, man. Let's hope that that's the way that. Well, we can hope for better for the Browns, but I think realistically, let's temper our thoughts after the surprising win over the weekend. And the Guardians, baseball is such a strange sport because you just never know what team is going to get hot at what time. Yeah, it doesn't favorites, not favorites. It doesn't matter.
You could tell me the Guardians win out over the next 5 games. You could tell me the Guardians lose the rest of the 5 games, and I wouldn't be like completely. Yeah. I would probably be surprised if they lost the rest of their games, but the way they've been playing. But I just think baseball is a fickle sport. It's a fickle sport.
Yeah. It is the least predictable, at least maybe not over the course of 182 games or 162 games, but it's definitely the least predictable over any particular playoff. You really don't have any idea who is going to play well, where or when or how. And we'll see. I hope they get in. I hope the guards get in and get a chance to play some postseason baseball. As I've said on this pod and in my normal life all the time, when people ask me about baseball, I'm like, I don't watch hardly any regular season baseball ever. I think tonight I watched 3 innings of the Guardians game. That's the only innings I've watched the whole season. But I do enjoy playoff baseball. There is nothing like the intensity and the tension of playoff baseball is unlike just about any other sport. And so I hope they get in so I can experience a little bit of playoff baseball in my first fall of retirement. So we'll be back next week with a retirement special on the best games by some of the best players in the league and talk a little bit about that. And we may have to start, we got to start breaking down when we're going to do our various previews and how we're going to do those to make sure we have enough time before the season starts to get those in. So we got to think about how we want to do our wins pool, our over-unders, our Western and Eastern Conference predictions, how we're going to do that. So we'll have to figure it out in terms of sequencing. But next week we'll definitely talk
maybe next week we do the retirement thing and we do the over-unders, Mike.
Yeah, that could be good.
In the East,
we'll just see.
Conference.
And we don't have to beat a dead horse on the retirement. My smile will be big enough to carry us through whatever we need to do. So it's all good, man. It's all good. All right, let's leave it there. Thanks to everyone for listening tonight. Really appreciate it. And we will catch you on our next episode.